Hello, I'm Reverend Christina Branum-Martin, the interim minister here at the Unitarian Universalist Fellowship of Clemson. It is so good to have you with us. After welcome and announcements from our worship associate, we will light our chalice. So gather a candle, a chalice, or something that you can light at home like this, and join us together soon. Thank you.
Good morning. It's good to be here and to be with you. I'm Carl Dieter, and I'm a member of the UU Fellowship of Clemson's Worship Associate team. Each week, this community comes together to participate in worship, music, and reflection. This is where we seek to have our hearts opened and our imaginations fired. This is the place that reminds us that we are deeply connected to one another and to all living things. Even though our building is closed, we gather together for weekly online worship. At 11:30 a.m. on Sunday mornings, we also gather for social connection and the sharing of joys and concerns in our Zoom meetings. Please join us. If you're joining us for the first time this morning, welcome. This fellowship is a religious community grounded in the heritage and principles of Unitarian Universalism. We seek to create a loving community, inspire joy and spiritual growth, and support courageous action. All are welcome, regardless of religious background, political persuasion, ethnicity, age, ability, sexual orientation, or gender identity or expression. If you have a desire to explore questions of truth and meaning and are respectful of our diversity of people and beliefs, you found kindred spirits here. If you'd like more information about this fellowship or Unitarian Universalism, please see information about us on our website, uufc.org. If you're interested in getting our weekly newsletter so you can get connected to our community for online social events, our weekly sharing of joys and concerns, and our collective efforts to support local social justice work, please reach out to the office by the email on our website. Here are some announcements for the week. Bingo is online Thursday, April 22nd at 6:30 p.m. The bidding is open now for the Coastal South Carolina Getaway Sunday, April 25th to May 5th. The bidding for a one-week stay on beautiful Pawleys Island, South Carolina, starts today and continues until Sunday, noon. Mike Cole and Jane McNamara's house is just steps away from the beach. Sleeps 10, has screened porches, a fabulous windows walk on property parking. This rental is valued at over $1,100 and is a wonderful destination for both relaxation and fun. Property and bidding details can be found in the weekly connection or by emailing Petra Baer at treasurer@uufc.org. There will be no coffee with Christina next week. She will be attending an interim ministers conference. Look for this event to resume in May. Fire pit gatherings, multiple dates beginning May 1st. Please bring a chair, flashlight, and your own snacks and beverages. The bathroom at the Founder's House will be available. Groups limited to 10 persons or less, including all adults and children. UUFC Novel Circle meets online. On May 5th, they will discuss The 13th Tale by Diane Setherfield. On June 2nd, they will discuss One Good Mama Bone by Bren McLean. UUA's common read, Breathe, by Manny Purr. To help us determine how UUFC wants to inspire and engage with this text, please take the short poll, which is available in the weekly connection. May 8th and the 22nd, the CABR workshop, Living the Pledge. Clemson Area Pledge to End Racism, CABR, is hosting a workshop over 2 Saturdays in May. Participants will explore racial justice concepts like implicit bias, white privilege, microaggressions, and social movements. Registration can be done through a weekly connection link. Today's opening words are by the poet Max Kapp from his poem, Gratitude. Often I have felt that I must praise my world for what my eyes have seen these many years and what my heart has loved. And often I have tried to start my lines. Dear Earth, I say, and then I pause to look once more. Soon I am bemused and far away in wonder, so I never get beyond dear Earth.
We shall be known by the company we keep, by the ones who circle around to tend these fires. We shall be known by the ones who sow and reap the seeds of change alive from deep within the earth. It is time now. Ourselves into the well. It is time now, and what a time to be alive. In this great turning we shall learn to lead in love. In this great turning we shall learn to lead in love. We shall be known by the company we keep, by the ones who circle around to tend these fires. We shall be known by the ones who sow and reap the seeds of change alive from deep within the earth. Ourselves into the well. It is time now, and what a time to be alive. In this great turning we shall learn to lead in love. In this great turning we shall learn to lead in love. In this great turning we shall learn to lead in love. In this great turning we shall learn to lead in love.
It is done.
We gather together in a spirit of love, with justice as our guide. This is our chosen covenant, to dwell together in peace, to seek the truth with freedom, and to care for one another.
The peace of wild things. When despair for the world grows in me, and I wake in the night at the least sound, in fear of what my life and my children's lives may be, I go and lie down where the wood drake rests in his beauty on the water, and the great heron feeds. I come into the peace of wild things, who do not tax their lives with forethought of grief. I come into the presence of still water, and I feel above me the day-blind stars waiting with their light. For a time I rest in the grace of the world and am free.
Hi there, it's good to be with you all again. Today, we're going to spend some time thinking about our seventh principle of Unitarian Universalism. Do you remember what that principle says? You might hear people say that it is respect for the interdependent web of all existence. In our Spirit Play classroom, we explore our seventh principle in our Violet Promise stories that help us to learn to value our Earth, the home we share with all living things. Because we share this planet, we are all connected in some way to every other creature on it. We are also connected to the land beneath our feet, to the water we drink, and to the air we breathe. When you think about it, that's a pretty big idea. In fact, it's such a big idea that it might seem sometimes like it's hard to fit it all inside our heads at once. So, we might find ways of thinking about such a big idea that make it a little bit easier to understand. One idea you might hear is that all life is like a great big circle, and everyone and everything goes around that circle in its turn. Today's story is about a little girl and her grandfather who helps her to see and understand that there are circles of life all around us. All Around Us by Zelina Gonzalez, illustrated by Adriana M. Garcia. Grandpa says circles are all around us. We just have to look for them. He points to the rainbow that rises high in the sky after a thundercloud has come. He traces the colorful arc with his hand and says, "Can you see? That's only half the circle. The rest of it is down below, in the earth, where the water and light feed new life. That's the part we cannot see." But in my mind, I try. Grandpa and I work side by side in the garden, planting flowers and pulling vegetables. We eat what we've grown, crunchy lettuce, sweet carrots, and spicy chilies. Grandpa saves the stems, leaves, and seeds to bury back in the ground. Here's another circle, he says. What we take from the earth, we return. He draws a big circle on his belly with his hand and a little one on mine and says, "We even have circles inside." This makes me laugh. Grandpa and I take a walk around our neighborhood, where we find other circles, the sun, the clock, the bicycle wheels. We stare at the green and brown rings in each other's eyes for a long time, and then we laugh again. He's right. Circles are everywhere. I'll show you one more important circle before the big round moon comes out, says Grandpa. We walk way back in our yard and sit under a tall pecan tree. Grandpa seems sad when we sit here, because this is where we bury the ashes of our ancestors. I don't remember them, but he does. Even our bodies return to the earth, he says, and pats the ground with his big hands. But that's only half of the circle. That's the part we cannot see. Finally, we walk to the front yard to water our smallest tree. Grandpa planted it for me on the day I was born, and everything that fed me while I grew in my mother's belly is buried at the roots. I love bringing water to the apple tree that is already bigger than I am. Grandpa pats my head and says, "Do you see, my grandchild? We have new life with you." I am part of the circle too, the part we can see, just like a rainbow.
I'd like to tell you a personal story as we enter into a time of prayer and meditation. A few summers ago, General Assembly was in Portland, Oregon, and I made a point of arriving a few days early. I explained to a friend of mine who lived there that I needed to go to the mountains because my life was so busy, always going, always doing. I had become so separate from nature that I had not been able to see the small, beautiful things around me on a daily basis. I felt I needed to go to the mountains where everything was so grand that I could not choose to ignore it. I needed to find myself grounded again. I needed to feel my feet barefoot on the earth. So my friend kindly took me. He took some time off work, and along the highway to Mount Hood, there were a series of waterfalls that were coming down the side of the mountain. Some were large, and tourist buses had stopped there. And some were really small and took a little bit of time to hike to. And we stopped off at one of the smaller ones, one of the less visited waterfalls. Most of the falls were inaccessible, but this one you could get right up next to. And a small path had been worn by others to a natural platform of rock, albeit very slippery, besides the pool of the base of water at the bottom of the fall. At first, I rationalized that observing the fall from afar was fine. There was a bench I could sit on and I could contemplate there. So I sat. And I thought to myself, I shouldn't go up there. I might slip. I might get wet. My shoes would get all muddy. But as I sat there, I realized I was drawn closer. So I followed the path as others had walked, and I stood on the rock, overwhelmed by the pounding of the water as it tumbled down from the mountainside into this pool by my feet. I felt the cold spray on my face of melted snow. I became transfixed by the sensation of the small water droplets that were forming on my cheeks. And at that moment next to the falls, I was not aware of the future or the past. I was purely in the present. It took my breath away. And I realized that mixing in with those water droplets were my tears. They were tears of joy, of recognition that the grandness and the beauty of the natural world. But they were also tears of grief. I acknowledged that I had become so busy with goals, with tasks and to-do lists, that I no longer insisted on time to stop, to just stop, and to just be, to be still, to be silent, and to recognize what it felt like again to be at home and in the present in my body. Someone once said, life is not measured by the number of breaths we take, but by the moments that take our breath away. And on that day, it was this case. Here's a picture of that day that I took of the waterfall. I invite you now to join me in the spirit of prayer and meditation. Find a comfortable position. Breathe deeply. Close your eyes if you feel comfortable doing so. Feel your body pulled down by gravity. Feel the weight of your bones supported. Feel your hands relaxed. Feel your feet resting on the floor. And listen to the sounds around you. Be in the present moment. Reflect and remember a time when you were also fully present to the natural world around you. Perhaps it was a beautiful or exotic place, in the mountains, at the beach, by the ocean. Perhaps it was long ago. Perhaps it was this morning in your own backyard, watering your garden or walking your dog. Let yourself go there. Figuratively, take your shoes off and feel your feet barefoot on the earth, in the present, right here, right now. What does your body tell you? What do you need? Listen, acknowledge, and remember. Amen.
For the beauty of the earth, for the splendor of the skies, for the love which from our birth over and around us lies, source of all to thee we raise this our hymn of grateful praise. For the wonder of each hour, of the day and of the night, hill and vale and tree and flower, sun and moon and stars of light, source of all to thee we raise this our hymn of grateful praise. For the joy of human care, sister, brother, parent, child, for the kinship we all share, for all gentle thoughts and mild, source of all to thee we raise this our hymn of grateful praise.
Having grown up in Unitarian Universalist churches and having the idea about being a minister for most of my adult life, many have spoken to me about their personal journeys of faith that brought them to Unitarian Universalism from another faith. They say, "I am so glad to be here." They are grateful for the content of the principles and the purposes as guides for living out their faith in the world. And they say they're grateful to be in a place where they are welcome to question and doubt and find their own answers. But for those who come across the threshold from other religious traditions, some have said that they still feel like something is missing. What I often hear is that it's ritual that they're missing. And perhaps some of you have had this sentiment yourself. When I ask for examples, sometimes it's familiar hymns. We have those. They talk about lighting candles and saying prayers and meditation, which we do. They explain, though, that they felt a certain way about the ritual. A classmate of mine in seminary shared that when he left Catholicism, he threw the baby out, but he wanted to keep the bathwater. And when he found Unitarian Universalism, he said he found a new baby, but he misses the bathwater. What I've been told in various ways is that having a religious experience is more than the intellectual idea of it. So I've begun to understand a little bit more about our particular history of Unitarian Universalism. And so from understanding that history, I explained to newcomers that we have inherited two very distinct ways of regarding religious experience from our liberal religious history. And today, we are caught in between the two, and we dance around the language of reverence. So on one hand, we have Transcendentalism. In the mid-1800s, Transcendentalism forged a new path for liberal religious thought. And the leaders of this movement held that we had been separated from God afar, and that instead God was in us and all around us. And one idea is that one is closer to God when in nature, rather than in the four walls, perhaps, of a stone church building. Ralph Waldo Emerson emphasized that intuition was our connection to the divine. The Spirit was present to all of us, and it was all around us in nature. He wrote, "I would find myself in God's sanctuary by walking in the woods alone, quiet and still, with the wind on my cheeks. I could hear the bird song and know that it was God's voice. It was not something separate from him," he said. God was there and I was a part of it. So we have Transcendentalism on this hand. And on the other hand, we have humanism. In 1933, the Humanist Manifesto was published. It was a seminal body of thought that was a convergence of religious, social, and scientific ideas of that time. Then science was offering a new understanding of the universe and our place in it. The manifesto signers were attempting to introduce to the world a new kind of religion, one that left myths and symbols and rituals of traditional religion behind, while providing a foundation for morality grounded in human reason. With its emphasis on reason and the intellect, traditional religious humanism had little place for such qualities such as awe and reverence. It understood the religious dimension to include all of life, but believed it was especially manifested, in quotes, in a heightened sense of personal life and in a cooperative effort to promote social well-being, close quote. Humanism at its core was about finding the foundations for expanding humanity's potential. Yet, this hallmark of liberal religion cut out the language of reverence that we had in Transcendentalism. Humanism and Transcendentalism. We have been dancing in between the two ever since. When I was a child in the Unitarian Universalists in the 1970s, I was taught in religious education that the Transcendentalists were exemplars of our faith. And I was also taught that we had moved beyond that time to a more liberal expression of religion. Secretly, I yearned to go out to nature and recreate Walden Pond of my own. I felt a connection with Native American honoring of Mother Earth, Father Sky, Brother Wind, and Sister Eagle. Yet I knew not to use this language when I was in my humanist-leaning church. This was not in keeping with the stronghold of humanism, and I knew that the language of reverence was too much like God talk. It was as if I was told that I was going down the slippery slope of superstition just for the sake of emotion. I understand now, so many years later, that I was being taught at that time to be detached from the understanding of the full importance of being connected to the world and to others as part of a personal journey of religious meaning. This meaning, instead, was to be found in the social construct of humanism. Thus, I was not taught explicitly about the importance of ritual or spiritual practice. At this time, Unitarian Universalism revered the intellectualism of religious freedom over the personal experiences that are the foundation of religious experience itself. The history of religion, not the institution of religion, but the intention and the purpose of religion is that human beings have always created a faith for themselves. We have always created a sense of wonder, of the ineffable significance of life. We have always brought our experiences of the natural world, of philosophy, and of science forward to create meaning in our lives. Not just what is rational, and thus segregating our thoughts and selves to make sense of our existence. When we make meaning from that understanding, then we are challenged to be the best persons we can be, and this in and of itself is a religious endeavor. In 2003, a third Humanist Manifesto was published. I was studying at the time, and when I read it, my heart sang. Not my mind, but my heart. It acknowledged that the 1930s humanism, as described in the first manifesto, had made sense at the time. But it also acknowledged that as the years passed and the times changed, the weaknesses and the limitations of religious humanism became apparent. And the decades to follow its publishing were the Holocaust, the advent of nuclear power, the strength of the feminist movement and the postmodernist movement. The question was asked, could morality come solely from humanity? And these historical challenges and questions shaped and redefined humanist thought that resulted in the second manifesto in 1973. And then since then, we've had the environmental crisis. In its wake, the new manifesto of 2003 refines its direction. This new manifesto recognizes that we are connected to each other and to the natural world in ways that we never knew we were before. This manifesto brings the forefront of thought that what we are a part of does not put us on the top of the pinnacle of all of experience. Instead, we are part of something grander and bigger than us, something that we are an integral part of. Humanism has reclaimed a language of reverence, to be in awe of nature through the means of science, is that we are connected and reconnected to our foundation, a connection with each other, our existence, and ourselves. Our principles and purposes, and specifically our seventh principle, resounds in this recognition. These are the beliefs of humanistic religious naturalism. Today, our religious histories are converging into one, transcendentalism and humanism. Today, we honor the spirituality is the quality of life in the here and now, in the genuineness, depth, and devotion to values other than self-interest. In her spiritual autobiography, The Spiral Staircase, religious scholar Karen Armstrong writes, "In the course of my studies, I have discovered that the religious quest is not about discovering the truth or the meaning of life, but about living intensely as possible in the here and now. The idea is not to latch on to something superhuman or to get to heaven, but to discover how to be fully human." This is what humanistic religious naturalism is all about. We have moved into the acknowledgement that spiritual practice is something that we need to cultivate as religious persons. And we do not do this alone or in groups. We do this alone or in groups. And we do this in yoga classes, in Buddhist meditation groups, and in groups that explore nature together or go on hikes. The question is, what is your spiritual practice? Do you have one? Here's what you need to ask yourself. Do you have a spiritual practice that brings you to being more loving? Do you have a spiritual practice that changes the way you live your life? And if the answer is yes, then it is your spiritual practice. Perhaps one of your spiritual practices is joining in with this particular community to worship with each other. Being a part of worship on the Sunday morning is more than going to the theater or going to the book club or a social gathering. It is an embodied spirit and experience of being together in community for this brief time. Let worship be a sacramental act that brings you back to the present moment. Let it become a ritual that invites you to your fullest expression, mind, body, and spirit as one. Let it be a ritual that reminds you that you are fully alive, and let this community hold you as you go deeper into who you are unfolding to become.
experiencing nature from a kayak. For most of my life, I have dwelled in human-constructed caves, reading, writing, studying, and teaching about the submicroscopic world of organic molecules, luxuriating in their immense beauty. Each day, needing to escape to the macro world of trees, animals, and the light of sun or moon, I would seek solitary solace in noonday or evening walks. And then, 14 years ago, I discovered the pleasures of sea kayaking, and over 11,000 miles have experienced on a larger scale the grandeur and splendor of the physical world, the tenacity and frailty of the biosphere, and exquisite revelations of self-discovery. There is sheer delight in the clouds moving across the sky, the play of sunlight upon the shoreline rocks and vegetation, its sparkling reflection off the water, and the variation of light and shadow on forested tree trunks in their winter sleep. Paddling beneath a full moon in a cloud-speckled sky is pure ecstasy as the moon teases by dressing and undressing with the clothing of the clouds. And beneath her cloudless splendor, the waters shimmer in her radiance, while the land is a dark, foreboding mystery, holding all the terrors of the night with a cacophony of sounds unknown to the overwhelming light of day. On my paddling trips, I have seen osprey, eagles, cormorants, red-tailed hawks, goshawks, great blue herons, loons, ducks, kingfishers, turkey, vultures, wild pigs, deer, red foxes, coyotes, beavers, river otters, snakes, turtles, sharks, dolphins, and often to my dismay, Homo sapiens. Once, while paddling in a light rain, I came across the great blue heron fishing at the water's edge and experienced an epiphany of two wild creatures, Carl and the heron, cold, wet, and alone together in Mother Nature's embrace. Aware that human-induced extinction may reach half of all life forms by the turn of the century, I am slowly developing greater empathy for the wild creatures I encounter than for my own kind. The pleasure I find in kayaking comes from the experience of mind and body propelling the kayak through wind and waves, sun and rain, choppy water, and other obstacles and forces bending before my will as we meet on the field of play. Paddling in my wake, a friend wrote, I watched him as he paddled steadily into the wind and noticed that the waves were now occasionally washing over the deck of the boat as the bow rose and fell. I knew he was in full defiance. His teeth would be clenched, but the edge of his lip would be turned up ever so slightly in a smile as he transformed this punishing duel with the headwinds and the confused waves into a whirling dance whose eroticism only he could comprehend. Long-distance kayaking provides a canvas for self-discovery, as bodily sensations of comfort, strength, fears of present and potential dangers, and an ever-vacillating will. Kayaking solo gives rise to a heightened sense of vulnerability, a tingling sensation of greater awareness, and an immersion in the natural world, uncluttered with human presence. There is both great serenity and peace in the sense of being alone in the universe, and a low-grade apprehension of the unknown. Alone with the world and one's own skills and experience, there is an edge, an electricity to the mutual embrace, and a quiet fear that serves as a guardian for decision-making and situational awareness. Perhaps the most ecumenical event in human history was the arrival of the first images of Earth seen from moon orbit, as photographed by the Apollo 8 astronauts. Rising above the moon's horizon, the brilliant blue sphere floating in the vast darkness of space that is inhospitable to life reminded people around the world that they were brothers and sisters and kin to all other life forms sharing spaceship Earth. I love escaping civilization's gilded cage through kayaking, and then returning enraptured by nature's beauty, pleasingly fatigued, spiritually renewed, singing praises to the living world, and looking more kindly upon the one animal that struggles to feel at home in the world. I feel a kinship to every bird and flower, to every creature, both great and small, every weed and pathogen, because we should share the nucleic acid blueprints and the improbable journey from atoms and molecules to living things. I feel a sorrow for the 99.9% of life that became extinct, and a love for the 1/10% that still struggles to survive. If a religious person finds the same ecstasy in the living world because they believe it is God's creation, then we can agree that all life is a wonderful thing and work to restrain our numbers and consumptive greed for the benefit of all living things.
When I go outside at night and look up and the stars are bright, sometimes I lay on the ground and imagine that the sky is down. And if the earth should then let go, I'd fall into the stars below. I'd fall into the stars below. I see the red sunset in its quiet splendor, I reflect that sun's not going down at all, but the earth is turning somersaults. And through his sunlit seed trails, we are on that great big whale. We're riding on that great big whale. I try to grasp the simple fact of this existence. Think of all the fantasies, fairy tales and wishes. None strike me as more unlikely or magnificent than this is. Seen up close, galaxies through telescopes, crimson hillsides in the fall, and more astounding than them all are pondering minds with eyes that see. These are deep mysteries, deep mysteries. I try to grasp the simple fact of this existence. Think of all the fantasies, fairy tales and wishes. None Some strike me as more unlikely or magnificent than this is. Like a strange enchanting play of impossible dimensions, the setting and the stage run light years in all directions, and the breathless scenes of the storyline defy comprehension. And when I think of all the roles in this production, all I know is I'm in the cast, but could it be I'm also in the front row seat to sit in my amazement, gazing to ooh and ah, to sigh and say, my, what a wonderful play. My, 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 my.
We've come to the end of our service. Thank you to all the people who put their energies into making this service possible. The music director, the worship associate, our director for lifespan faith formation, for our chalice lighters and our persons who sing in the choir. What a beautiful experience we have in putting this together. Thank you so much. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth or the fire of commitment or the warmth of community. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again. Go in peace, my friends.